In 2003, Takara released a redeco of the original Starscream toy via eHobby, which appeared to take inspiration for its colors from a creamsicle. It was called Sunstorm, and allegedly was based on one of the generic seekers from More Than Meets the Eye Part 1. Surprisingly, Sunstorm would make his way to American media just a year later, as a major antagonist no less, being a clone of Starscream with a god complex who is powered by a nuclear reactor. Hang on. Clone, god complex, nuclear-powered robot. Suddenly I want to watch Gundam Seed again. He also popped up in IDW's rebooted comics, being kept in a test tube by Shockwave until Exarchon freed him and promptly melted, and his name and colors were used for the sycophant Starscream in Transformers Animated. Sunstorm as a concept has fascinated me ever since I first read about him on TF Wiki years ago. A transformer with the power of the sun not just in the palm of his hand, but his whole body and the area around it, constantly spewing radiation around him, who believes himself to be the vessel of Primus's will. I've wanted to see him adapted into television or the films for years, simply for his raw presence as a villain. I can easily see him towering over the other Seekers, a reflection of the raw power that he can barely contain. Hasbro haven't made a Sunstorm toy since 2013, but since when has that deterred me? It just so happens that they made a Seeker-esque toy that reflects my vision of Sunstorm to a reasonable degree. This is Legacy Leader Class Skyquake, or rather Dreadwing, as that's the variant I was able to get first. I didn't even see Skyquake on shelves until after Legacy United came out. I started by doing something that I should really do more often when I make these. I made a digital mock-up, or Digibash, which would let me get an idea of what my chosen color palette would look like. Now, Sunstorm has had so many different color schemes over the years that I don't think there really is a definitive one. So I settled for the original toy's colors, with some animated inspiration sprinkled in later. The only thing I didn't settle on completely was the head. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep the Skyquake head or swap it with another. I considered using the Gamer Edition Starscream head, but it was a bit too small, so I decided to leave that on the back burner for a bit. I then disassembled the figure as best as I could. This is yet another Transformer with way too many pins for my taste, and I couldn't get most of them out even with my pin punch. Unlike Siege Sideswipe though, he still has a decent amount of screws in his construction, so taking him apart wasn't too bad. But could someone please tell me why the forearms have to be like this? Anyway, I sanded him and gave him a bath in the sonic cleaner to remove the dust, then primed him with Mr. Color White Spray Primer. On every other project in this series, I've used Tamiya Primer, but I decided to try this stuff when my local hobby store ran out, and I've been liking the results. Masking was a bitch. Then again, it usually is. There were lots of curved surfaces and corners with little surface area for the tape to grip, and this would prove problematic later in certain areas. Not to mention the parts I couldn't separate due to non-removable pins. At the moment though, I wasn't too concerned and went ahead. I would be keeping most of the gray and translucent red, so I masked those areas off. My choice of orange would be Mr. Color 59, and I applied this with my airbrush. I chose Reaper Brick Red as a complement, not unlike the animated incarnation of Sunstorm, and initially I planned to airbrush this too. However, I didn't feel like doing more masking, and these were comparatively small areas, so I wound up hand painting these parts. Now the head was an interesting situation. The Prime Skyquake head is very distinct and only sort of resembles the typical Seeker look. I've always pictured Sunstorm with a malicious grimace on his face, and this ticks that box, but it still didn't quite hit the mark for me. So I made my own. I measured Dreadwing's head so I knew how much room I had to work with, and then I just kinda winged it in Blender. The design received many tweaks as I shrank the head and lowered it down. I had to use a Boolean modifier and a big cube to make room for the neck, but eventually I got it just about right. It doesn't fit quite as securely as it should, and he can barely look up, but in my defense, this is my first time making something to fit a ball joint. You see, the only kind of engineering that I have any sort of formal training in is in Team Fortress 2. I also found out during the reassembly process that it doesn't have enough clearance for the transformation, but at this point I can probably remove some plastic from the inside to make room. In the end, it matches the look I wanted, and at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with it. The last detail to be added were insignias from toy hacks on the wings, and then I gave him a coat of Tamiya clear semi-gloss spray. And look at this bastard! Bold, brash, and ready to smash. Yes! In your face, creamsicle! Soundwave, get that bot a promotion. This is pretty much what I've always wanted Sunstorm to look like, and he looks killer with my other Seekers. There are a few paint chips and scrapes on him, but otherwise he's one of the cleanest customs I've done yet. The only major issue is that he retains all the problems of the mold, namely the lack of heals. It is a miracle that the paint hasn't even scratched in the making of this video. Still, he looks amazing and poses like a dream. And hey, that makes 11 Seekers that I have at least one of now. And with Ramjet's reissue on the way and plans for a Slipstream custom in the near future, I'll soon have all the Starscream clones from Animated too. But that's for another day. For now, I'm going to be focusing on some Decepticons of a more benevolent variety. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a cancer screening to get to.